Oh. From the post-millennial, no votes for Bombala's genocide. 14 arrested as agitators crash NYC rally for Kamala. Clash with cops. I love that they're calling Bombala. Kamala Bombala. Sure. Kamala's the VP. So she does very little. But she's still a part of an administration that is doing a pretty bad job. Now, the far left is very anti-Israel. And the Democrats need the Jewish vote. And Jewish voters in this country are very pro-Israel. So they're between a rock and a hard place here. The funny thing is they called Barack Obama Obama. And I love that because British people, when they say words that end with A, they say And words that end with E, they say Or I'm sorry, words that ends with ER, they say It's the weirdest thing how British people speak, but they go, Obama. Seriously, go, it was Obama who came in. Obama? I like that name because that's who he was. They're not going to escape this one. The Post-Millennial says, anti-Israel activists crashed a Democratic rally supporting Vice President Kamala Harris in New York City on Wednesday, where Mayor Eric Adams was speaking and went on to trash the after-party venues, causing thousands of dollars in damage to the nearby restaurant. Agitators wearing keffiyehs set off smoke bombs, and some were taken into custody by NYPD officers. Here we go.
In Gaza, there's fresh water! How dare you!
Annoying noises. I don't know what you need to hear the annoying noises for those that are listening. So you've got... They're intentionally annoying, and I love this because it's almost like they have no intention of winning any political goals. Then the whistles come in. The whistles are the far left. And they come in and try to make the most annoying sounds imaginable. Well, congratulations, I guess. 14 people arrested. Chaos descended on Bird in Hand, a restaurant in Harlem, where prominent Democrats, including Governor Kathy Hochul and NYC Mayor Eric Adams, had gathered earlier in the day to show their support for Harris and her running mate, Tim Walz, neither of whom attended the event. Demonstrators interrupted Adams as he spoke and later stormed the restaurant during the after-party, causing thousands of dollars in damages. We have this from Politico. NYC kickoff rally for Harris confronts pro-Palestinian demonstration. Hold on to all of that anger until after November. Now, what I find really funny about this picture is Elad's right there. Look at him. Look at him sitting there looking exasperated as everybody films. All these protesters are angry. And Eric Adams is like, be mad at Trump or whatever. This was the beginning. And then you end up with this. This is a video from Timcast News. Chaos and commotion as NYPD clears the sidewalk outside of the DNC fundraiser in Harlem of anti-Israel protesters. NYPD makes more arrests. Yeah, it's once again just loud noises, so I don't know that we need to listen to that. But while we're playing this clip, you can see the police lining up. Police often do this. In New York, they'll seemingly form a barrier around nothing, and the protesters are as dumb as a box of rocks, so they often will then try to get at the nothing. It works, and the NYPD knows it. What is this far-left horde? Do they have policies? Do they have positions they want? They kind of just hate Israel. I can respect, to a degree, those that are saying things like, stop spending billions of dollars on Israel. I say, okay. Now, their motivation for it is that they hate Israel as a colonial state, and many of them just don't like Jews. My motivation is, I think Israel can do what it wants. It's its own country, can defend itself, but we're America, and we should secure our own borders. That being said, when you hear the squeaking, the horns, the whistles, the yelling, it's nothing. It's nothing. It's nothing coherent. What are you going to win? You know, the question I have for the Trump campaign and for anybody really is, are you earning votes? So when I see this thing where they like attack Joe Rogan, all right, let's talk about the Joe Rogan stuff a little bit. Joe Rogan says RFK Jr. makes sense, and then he gets attacked by some of the most ardent Trump supporters. My question, did you earn any votes? No. Saying you don't like Joe Rogan doesn't really do much for you. Defending Joe Rogan, endearing yourself to his moderate fan base might actually help you. That's the big question. Does it earn you votes? And what they're doing here on the ground ain't gonna earn them nothing. Showing up, attacking a restaurant, screaming, honking horns, and blowing whistles gets you nothing. That's why I call it chaos. The far left is a fire. The Democrats think they can wield fire good. But They can't. You can't. The fire burns. And they try to use that against the right, but they can't control it. So what happens? Sure enough, the far left did support Joe Biden last time around, and they courted them, and they fanned the flames, hoping that the fires would hurt Donald Trump. And to an extent it did, although I think the ballot harvesting is really what got him home. Now the problem is, what do you do with a raging fire? Here's another video of a ton of cops just surrounding the protesters. You know, I'll tell you this. When Democrats get desperate and start entertaining these far leftists, allowing them to protest or giving them a voice, it does give the protesters to a certain degree some kind of advantage. Now, do I really believe that the left will get what they want? No. The Democrats are just going to entertain as much as they need to until the far left becomes useless again. That is the nature of Democrats. Here's an example: reparations. For some reason, every 4 years we debate reparations, and then we stop. It's almost like they only care about the election cycle. Democrats will promise you the world, and then as soon as you vote for them, they will ignore you. Not like Republicans are much better, don't get me wrong, but these protesters, now that they're no longer useful to the Democrats, here you go. Kamala Harris had that rally where they were chanting, "Kamala, Kamala, you can't hide. We charge you with genocide." And then she was like, "Do you want Donald Trump to win? Then keep talking. Otherwise, I'm speaking. I'm speaking." Yeah, that's it. Rock in a hard place. I'm excited for this, I guess. So we went to the RNC. We set up a venue just outside of the RNC, and we were doing a live event. We interviewed several people who were there. We went down to the convention and hung out a little bit. Got some burgers. That was fun. Went down there a couple times, and now we're not going to go to the DNC. I don't know why any sane person would go down right now. It's coming up this next week, and they're warning it's going to be like 68 with mass riots. People are going to get beaten. People are going to get hurt. I'm worried someone's going to get shot. The Democrats have installed Kamala Harris without a single vote cast for her. The delegates have decided she will be the nominee. They've reportedly, Kamala's using Joe Biden's FEC number, which I thought that was a crime. She's using it so that she can take his donations. The way it's supposed to work is whenever you sign up to run for office, you get an FEC number. I could be wrong about this because I read a report, but this is what it said. You get an FEC number that follows you for life. That way people can put the number in and look up all the donations that have come into you and like disclosures you need to release. Kamala Harris is using Joe Biden's right now, despite the fact that he's not running. She's doing this so that all of the donations that went to Joe Biden that are attributed with that one FEC number are now attached to her campaign. I think that's illegal. I think that at the very least should be illegal. I think that she should be in jail for using this money. I think the money should be immediately returned to everybody who donated. That being said, far left protesters and rioters and extremists are not going to take kindly to what's going on in Chicago with the DNC. They're not going to take kindly the Democrats ousting Bernie Sanders, who is now coming out and saying outright they took it from him. Let me pull up this tweet that I had. Here we go. Hotspot of Bernie Sanders saying, I think, well, how long is this? 2 minutes? Let's play this clip. And this is from Hotspot Media Company. Bernie Sanders admits he got cheated at the 2020 election and acknowledges the DNC's shady fiasco of the 2020 Iowa caucus. We won the first 3 primaries. Then the establishment got very, very nervous. Let me play this clip for you.
Is the best person to run against Donald Trump right now?
Well, she is the person, and
that won't change probably, huh?
No, she'll be the Democratic candidate. And, you know, I've known Kamala for a number of years. Not best friends, but I've known her. Mm-hmm. She was in the Senate for a short period. She's very smart, and she's determined. I mean, above and beyond her views on the issues, which I, support most of them, not all. You got to give credit to somebody, a black woman, to move up the ladder. That ain't easy stuff.
Bernie.
There's a lot of resistance there. And she's persistent, she's strong, and I respect that. And
I actually will give it to Bernie Sanders on that point. Kamala is strong. She's done a lot of nasty things. She's been accused of a lot of nasty things. She's a vile person, but she's got a fire. She got a fire in her. And I give respect to anybody willing to fight. A lot of Republicans ain't got that fire. A lot of Republicans will be like, but the Democrats are mean. And then they'll do nothing. So a lot of like Adam Kinzinger, man, they cracked that whip. He dropped to his knees and says, please, I will do anything you say.
I think she'll be a good candidate. I was interested that Trump apparently backed out of a debate with her on ABC. And I wouldn't, I have debated her, as a matter of fact. She's tough.
She's tough. Was there a chance that you were going to get that nominate, or as an independent, can you get been plotted with the Democratic Party and put in? No. Was there even a call about it or anything?
No. I ran in 16. I ran against Hillary Clinton, and I ran in 20.
Yeah, I remember. And I felt like you didn't get treated fairly, to be honest with you.
And that's what happens when you take on the establishment. So what happened is we won the first 3 primaries, and then the establishment got very, very nervous, and there were a whole lot of candidates in the Democratic primary. And they said, hey, be a good idea if you all dropped out, let Joe Biden be the one candidate. People rallied around him.
And do they call? Is there a call that you get, and it's like you're not going to move forward? Is it just like news articles? Like how does the establishment?
Well, what happens is I won the popular vote in Iowa. I won the New Hampshire primary. I won the Nevada primary, and those were the first 3. And then front pages of the New York Times, Democratic establishment very nervous. Bernie Sanders could win the whole. We were doing very well in the polls, and I think behind the scenes, people thought there were like 15 different candidates. And they were splitting up the vote, and that's how I was not necessarily getting over 50%. I was getting more than other people, so I was on the way to victory. And they said, look, Bernie shouldn't be the candidate for a variety of reasons. We don't want him the candidate, drop out. And then on one day, a lot of people, 1 or 2 days, a lot of people dropped out. It was Joe Biden and me, and Joe had a lot of support, and all these people came behind him, and that's what happened. Let me also say, having said that, Biden is a friend of mine. I think he has done a very good job over the last 3.5 years. And I'm working very hard to see that Kamala is.
I am so happy this man did not win. Bernie deserved to lose, and I'm glad he did. And I supported him in 2015. I'll tell you why. Let's go back in time. Let's go Bernie and Trump similar from Vox.com. Let's see. Where do we have the story? That's from 2020. Talking about Bernie Sanders being the biggest threat. Oh, here you go. I'm interested in what they say. 2017. The Bernie voters who defected to Trump, explained by a political scientist. Oh, yeah? 12% of Bernie Sanders supporters from the Democratic primary crossed party lines and voted for Trump. In several key states, Pennsylvania, Wisconsin, Michigan, the number of Sanders to Trump defectors were greater than Trump's margin of victory, according to new numbers released Wednesday by UMass Professor Brian Schaffner. I'll give a shout out to the Dilly guy for basically saying, I tweeted, I was a supporter of Bernie Sanders. I did not vote for Trump in 2016, but after watching all these shows, people like Joe Rogan, reading the news and reporting on it, I decided I was going to vote for Donald Trump. These are the people we want to court, the moderates and even moderate, like left-leaning individuals who can be convinced for populist reasons to vote for Donald Trump. And Dilly was just like, F you, dork, you voted for Sanders or whatever. And it's like, if Trump loses, that's why. Because he's got these overly aggressive diehards who are acting like leftists, pushing people away. In an interview, Schaffner noted that in an election this close, any number of voting blocks, blah, blah, blah. Tell me why. The way to think about it is this. As several people have noted, that this election was so close that any number of things could have proved a decisive difference. So what's he saying? One piece that's important to keep in context this year is that you always see the kind of defection between a primary and a general election. We get it. Is he saying why? Disagreeing that white people have advantages among Sanders' primary voters is interesting. There was a racial component to this, as defectors are much more likely to disagree that whites are advantaged. Let me break it down for you. I don't need some guy to tell you. I can tell you. And why I'm glad Bernie Sanders lost, why he deserved to lose. And that video of him saying, well, they took it from me. And I'm a friend with Joe Biden. Fine. Good. I'm glad you lost. Luke Rudkowski and I met Bernie Sanders at an event in D.C. 12 years ago. And it was just normal guy. It was, oh, there's Bernie Sanders. How about that? I saw in Bernie Sanders a guy who said, no open borders. Open borders is a Koch brothers proposal. He said he wants to get rid of the Trans-Pacific Partnership. He wanted to help working class Americans. He wanted to bring jobs back to this country. He didn't want open borders. And I'm like, I like this guy. I like this guy. He was talking about Medicare for all. At the time, it was much more, not so much Medicare for all, but more of a universal health care plan. And there's nuances and debates to this. I'll tell you my position in a second. And so I was like, I like this guy. Donald Trump had similar policy positions. Vox.com said they were similar. But Trump was too weird. I'm just like, Trump's a TV reality. I'm like, I don't want to go Idiocracy. I don't want the WWI Hall of Fame guy. And like, I'm just not interested. Well, a lot of people defected from Bernie to Trump because Bernie was a populist who didn't want open borders. And Donald Trump had similar plans. Bernie was anti-war. That was it. I was like, we got a guy who's staunchly anti-war right here. You know, I don't know what Trump's on about. I'm not a Republican. I don't like the Republican Party. Then they stole it from Bernie Sanders. I dodged a bullet. Bernie is weak. He is a pathetic, frail, and weak man. He could not stand up for what he believed in. He still, to this day, bends the knee, and it is pathetic. And Donald Trump has just insulted and pushed back and challenged everyone around him, and that I respect. And world leaders respect it too. So when Donald Trump becomes the president of no new wars, of securing our borders, ending the Trans-Pacific Partnership, I'm like, wow. Trump gave so many of these 1999 leftists who protested the World Trade Organization what they wanted. I'm actually surprised more didn't vote for him. Bernie Sanders, even though we know it was stolen from him, is still going, well, I'm friends with them. I'm going to just get on my knees and lick their feet. Good for you, Bernie. You'd have been the worst president this country's ever seen. And I'm glad I dodged that bullet. Now, considering that even Bernie acknowledges they stole it from us, we've got this from news.wttw.com. Chicago police will face a big test during the Democratic convention. Here's what to know. The DNC is to take place from the 19th and the 22nd. 4 days away, ladies and gentlemen. And the protests are going to be big. I mean, the 19th is what, Monday? This weekend's going to get bonkers. Will pose the most significant test of the Chicago Police Department since the summer of 2020. The convention will take place as CPD continues to struggle to comply with a more than 5-year-old federal court order requiring the department reform itself after decades of scandals, misconduct, and brutality. CPD will face intense scrutiny as it responds to what are likely to be massive protests fueled by intense debates over reproductive rights, as well as the Israel-Hamas war that has devastated Gaza. That response will test a new policy that would allow mass arrests of protesters that was revised after a coalition of reform groups warned it violated the First Amendment and set the stage for chaos. Exactly how many people are headed to Chicago for the DNC? Well, what we're hearing now is that when you look at the permits requested, oh boy, the protesters are planning some shenanigans. More than 5,000 delegates representing all 57 U.S. states and territories will gather at the United Center of McCormick Place United Center and McCormick Place to celebrate the nomination of Kamala Harris. McCormick Place is effing massive, by the way. The Democratic nominee for the president, as the Democratic nominee for vice president. In all, city officials expect the convention to draw 50,000 visitors, including 12,000 volunteers and 15,000 members of the media. So I'll tell you why I'm not going there. First of all, people inside are going to be extremely hostile. That would be fun, actually. And that's actually a reason to be there. That's when we get the opportunity to get all these liberals and be like, come on, bring it on. Let's have a conversation. However, unfortunately, outside, you're going to get caught in a riot. And you don't want to be in a car caught in a riot. That's just it. Someone's going to get shot. This is Chicago, man. They say the United Center isn't big enough to accommodate everything that takes place, while the made-for-TV roll call performances and speeches will be at the United Center. McCormick Place will host meetings and briefings, officials said. The Republicans had a similar setup in Milwaukee, splitting the convention between the Fiserv Forum and the Baird Center. Actually, I think they had like 3 buildings. The United Center and McCormick Place are not close. How will CPD protect both and patrol the city? Yeah, that's going to be tough. I mean, simple question. They're not going to be able to. It's going to be a struggle. Why do people keep saying it's going to be like 1968? There are several coincidences. Like President Joe Biden, former President Lyndon Johnson dropped his bid for re-election, throwing the nominating process into disarray. But the similarities end there. Harris and Walz have already secured the party's nomination via a virtual roll call, and Democrats are firmly behind them to take on former President Donald Trump and his vice presidential running mate, J.D. Vance. While 2024 has been a tumultuous political year, it is nothing on 1968. which saw riots, assassinations, and a fervent debate over the Vietnam War, which was at its height. Massive anti-war protests along Michigan Avenue triggered a police riot, highlighting the party's split over the war and helping to elect President Richard Nixon. Those images indelibly stained Chicago's reputation as a home for political conventions. But the Democratic National Convention returned in 1996. It was peaceful, helping to boost former President Bill Clinton's re-election bid. They say, okay, forget the comparisons to 1968. Let's talk about 2020. 2 probes found CPD failed to protect the constitutional rights of thousands of Chicagoans during the unrest and protests that followed George Floyd's murder. His murder, really. Officers beat protesters with batons, doused their faces with pepper spray, used racial slurs, and mocked the protesters' demands. In many cases, the conduct violated protesters' First Amendment rights and involved unjustified and excessive force, according to the probe. So far, Chicago taxpayers have spent at least $6.8 million to defend and settle lawsuits. All right, let me tell you what I see. February 7th, 2014. 3 convicted of some charges tied to 2012 Chicago NATO plot. Now, this is a contentious story. The activists argued, and I was there at the time, that these guys were framed, basically. They had beer-making equipment that the police claimed was actually to make Molotov cocktails. I'd assume the protesters are lying. These guys got charged with terrorism, though they weren't convicted. They were convicted on other charges. The police said that they... Here we go. The prosecutor said something like, do we have to wait for a Chicago police officer to be set on fire? The defense attorneys had described the 3 as drunken braggarts who had been egged on by older undercover officers, goofs. One guy said in a recording, are you ready to see a police officer on fire? Jurors began their deliberations. Ultimately, they said that these guys had weapons. They were accused of planning attacks using firebombs, other weapons targeting police stations, Obama's re-election headquarters, and Mayor Rahm Emanuel's house. Okay. These are far leftists who were accused of targeting Obama's house. Chicago is going to be nuts. I don't want to be there. I don't see the point. The Democratic Party is a chaotic party of nonsense. The Republicans maybe cringe, often, most of them, but some of them are funny. The younger ones are funny. And you know this thing is really interesting. The youth vote. The youth vote. Let's go back to 2016. We're talking 8 years ago. So 2016, wow, really? It's kind of crazy. You had a lot of 25-year-olds. These are people who didn't really care to vote, and they were online making memes and laughing and making jokes. There was a youth culture element for Donald Trump. Not that he won the youth vote, but there was a lot of energy. These people probably didn't go out and vote, but their memes probably helped. A lot of these guys now in their early to mid 30s, or for me, I'm 38. A lot of these people, they're not making memes anymore. There are new people making memes, but it seems that many of these people are overly aggressive, way too diehard Trump, and they're coming off like extremists. You don't want to insult people who voted for Bernie Sanders, and you don't want to insult Joe Rogan. Republicans are supposed to be the calm and collected types, and there's an alliance now with moderates and post-liberals who are saying we want security and function for our country and society. Instead, it's conflict and chaos. I can't predict what will happen, but I certainly hope people get the message. Chicago's going to be fun, I guess. I'll leave it there. Next segment's coming up at 4 p.m. on this channel. Ladies and gentlemen, Joe Biden, I think he's going to drop out as president. The new poll says he will. Smash that like button, subscribe to the channel, share the show with your friends, become a member at timcast.com. Follow me on X and Instagram at Timcast. For those that are watching live, I'm going to read your super chats now. For everybody else, we will see you all at 4 p.m.